everybody, welcome back to another edition of Warriors Off-Road. Today we're going to discuss something that comes up quite a bit with my customers. I get a lot of phone calls. It's called the front end alignment. Now this is going to be specifically for the Sector 250 and the Strike 250, as they share all the same components in the front. The same basic theory will follow through a lot of other vehicles. I mean, whether a car you drive every day, whether it's an off-road vehicle or whatnot. So let's get into it. There's a couple reasons why you're going to need to check the alignment. First would be that you buy one of our lift kits, and that will change the alignment. Second is maybe you purchase some heavy-duty tie rod replacement, so you're going to have to redo your alignment. Or third, you've had an off-road excursion, a little accident, maybe rollover. You've bent or damaged one of the tie rods, or you've broken or damaged the steering box, and it's got to be replaced. So we're going to go over some of the steps you need to know on how to get this going straight, safely, and easily for you. Alright, let's start off with some of the basics. This is your steering gearbox. It's actually got what they call a fan gear. So the steering shaft will come into this section right here, your steering wheel itself. And as you turn this, it will rotate the gear back and forward, right or left. And that energy translates to the movement of the tie rods down to what we call the spindles. Now this is just a mock-up. This is just a prototype, you know. Alright, so this is what a stock spindle is going to look like on your Striker Sector 250. This is where the hub and wheel are going to mount to. Your tie rod's going to go here, and of course this is where your ball joints go for the suspension. That being said, so one of the first things we need to do is inspect the steering system itself. So an easy way to do that is, one, you want to make sure that if you're replacing something because of damage due to an accident or rollover or what have you, you want to make sure the spindle is in good working order, the steering box is in good working order. If you've replaced it, you want to make sure it's replaced properly. The HiSUNs, the tie rods go like this. The outer one by the knuckle will be pointing up, and the one by steering box gets pointed down. I do get a lot of customers asking me, it doesn't fit in the taper correctly. Well, that's probably due to having it upside down. So it'll be a little Z shape. So once you've inspected all the components and you're satisfied with everything's in good working order, we want to make sure, first and foremost, that the steering wheel is centered. So we'll rotate. It takes about a turn and a half, 1.5 to 1, I think is the ratio. So it takes about a turn and a half either way. So once the steering wheel is perfectly straight, then we can start with the alignment. Now sometimes having a second person to help you out is just the easier way to go. Doing this yourself, you're going to have to be hopping back and forth a lot to check the steering wheel alignment and to do some of the measurements you just can't reach by yourself. So once we know the steering wheel is straight and centered, we're going to come and check the alignment. Now, easy way to do this is start with what I would call a neutral. So these are your tie rods. On the end of the tie rods, there's these little nuts. We call them jam nuts. And when they're tight down, they prevent it from the tie rod from coming out of adjustment. So, first thing I want to do is I want to break these loose. The stock ones are 14 millimeter. Aftermarket typically run about 17 millimeter. And most everything on this you'll find out is metric. So once I loosen the jam nuts on here, I'm going to, on both sides, I'm going to find a fixed point that shares the same measurements on both sides of the frame. So maybe I will go to, these represent the front wheels on the vehicle. So I can either start from the rear or the front of the front wheel hub area. Well, I'm going to find a common ground area. So I'm going to measure somewhere and say, oh, this is X measurement, and that's X measurement here. And I want them to be the same on both sides. So whatever point you pick on the frame or the suspension, you find a solid point the same place on both wheels. So if I'm going to start off the back, I'm going to measure from A to B and say, okay, it's 16 point something, and this one is 16 point something. So I want to get them till they're perfectly the same, symmetrical. Once I can do that, then I can start doing my alignment. Again, I'll go back and make sure the wheels hasn't turned. Okay, so I'll make sure the steering wheel is straight. I'm going to get in the front of the vehicle and I'm going to push up and down on the bumper. And what I'm doing is what we call settling the suspension. So I'm going to get it in there. Once I know that I have the same distance on both sides, the most important number we're looking for is now the toe-in measurement. So I'm going to go to the center of the tire on the front tires. I'm going to go to center on both of them. This is on the back side, you're going to need help because you can't reach over and do that. Okay, so on this particular one I get 31 3/4, and then I'm going to do the same on the front. I'm going to go to the center of the front tire to the center of the front tire, and 32.5. So this one's actually towed in perfectly on this one, but for demonstration purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tow this one in pretty drastically just to give you an offset. This is typically what you'll probably see once you do a lift kit installation, is the toe tends to come here, move in. So what we're going to do is we're going to readjust it. So I'm going to measure the center on the front tire and the back of it. So now I got about 34.5. Center to center on the front. Here I got about 31.5. So big difference. So once I got the tie rods loose, a couple ways you can turn the tie rod itself. You can use a little wrench to fit in the slot that's on here. If you don't want to do that, I've seen pliers used. Get a good grip on here and you're able to turn this. Sometimes there's dirt inside the threads, prevents it from turning. Either way, it's going to be fine. One note on the inner tie rods here, normally there's going to be frame sections, there's going to be suspension components, there's going to be brake lines, there's going to be a steering shaft comes through here. It's hard to get inside of here. If you can reach in there, great, good on you. Again, it's 14mm on the stock ones. If you can't, you can use what they call a crow's foot. And it's simply just basically a wrench that you can attach to an extension. And what that allows me to do is I'm allowed to get in here, slide it down here, and using just a standard ratchet, I can get in here and loosen and tighten that jam nut. So crow's foot, anywhere from $8 to $12, pretty cheap but invaluable. Keep that in your toolbox. All right, so we've got, per se, we're going to use a lift kit for this installation. So we've installed the lift kit. Now we know the toe's in. So what I'm going to do, center the steering wheel. I'm going to do my measurements, my base measurements on the front tires from center to center on the back side, and center to center on the front side. Once I have that down, I'm going to start rotating the tie rods. Now, you don't want to do just one side. You have to do whatever turns I do on this side, I want to do the same turn on this side. So if I did a turn here, I'm going to do a turn here. If I do a turn here, I'm going to do a turn here. I'm trying to keep everything symmetrical. Okay? When it looks like they're going to be even, you can visually kind of see down the sides of the UTV when I think they're going to be just about where they need to be. Again, I'm going to push up and down on the suspension, settle it, make sure it's good. Double check my steering wheel straight. I'm going to keep coming back until I get the measurement I need. Now on the front, the toe in, as we call it, should be an 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch less than the rear. You never want perfect numbers, both sides. Just for number's sake, let's say this is 33 and that's 33. That's wrong. So what I want is I want 33 here, and then I want 32 and say 3/4 tops inside here. So I'm going to measure this again. So on this particular model here, we got 33 1/4 on the rears. On the front, I got 32. I'm still out quite a bit. So again, I'm going to make one turn here. I'm going to make one turn here. And we're going to keep going until I get to about 33, 32, and 3/4 right there. So once I'm good, there's one more measurement I want to do. I'm going to settle the suspension one more time, bounce it up and down. I'm going to make sure my steering wheel is straight. And once I'm happy with the toe-in numbers, and I know the fronts are about a 1/4 inch in, I'm going to come back and find a spot on either the rim, the spindle, or whatever that's the same on both sides. Find another common measurement that's the same on both sides. I'm going to measure that 16.5, and so I'm going to make sure that both wheels 16.5. This is just for this jig, of course. So I'm going to make sure, again, I'm going to find a common spot on the front. There. I'm making sure everything is the same on both sides. What will happen sometimes, you can have your toe in perfectly set, but if your wheels are like this, or your wheels are like this, then it doesn't have the same dimensions here. So when the steering wheel is straight, it's going to shoot off one way or the other. So again, steering wheel straight, bounce the suspension up and down, settle it. Measure the rear of the front tires and the front of the front tires. Make sure they're towed in a 1/4 inch, but make sure they're the same. Pick a spot on the frame. It doesn't have to be the steering box. Or the suspension. Wherever you want to pick that spot, it's the same on both sides, and you want those numbers to be the same on both sides. Okay? And then once we got the alignment down, we're going to come back here and we're going to tighten our jam nuts. And we're going to make sure that we hold the tie rod. We don't want to come out of adjustment. So we're going to hold that tie rod, and we're either going to use our wrench here to tighten it up, or we're going to use our crow's foot down here and tighten it up. The outsides are a little easier. Even with the tire on, you're able to get in here and you can tighten that up pretty good. So we're going to move that in. Tighten it up real tight. Same one on the both sides. We would come in here and tighten this up. And I would do the same thing. I would hold your tie rod and I would make sure everything is tight. Once it's all done, again, I'm going to make sure the steering wheel is straight, bounce the suspension up and down, settle the suspension, come back and do one last measurement. The center of the tire on the front tires in the rear, and then the center of the front tires on the front. Exactly a 1/4 inch toe end. So I know when I go straight, the wheels are straight. I know my toe end is perfect, and that's going to make a whole lot of, alleviate a whole lot of problems when we're going off-road. So that's how you do the suspension on here. I hope you had a good time, and visit us back for more videos, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot and have a good day.